think the phases are a little bit. Sometimes they're just.
Life is good, right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's the only one that goes. He'll go for days.
Beautiful,
Yeah,
sunny
when he
Southern
sees
California.
When he gets convicted, you know what I
Can't
mean?
beat that.
And then it's not,
You know,
I don't ever
having our
say
freedom,
anything. I don't
ability
have 'cause he already
to
gets
cruise
convicted.
around and do what we
Stuff
like.
that, but, you know,
Pretty
I
blessed.
know, he knows I know.
Let's talk about Venice. Not just the skateboarding scene of Venice, like Venice, the neighborhood.
Well, Venice for me, man, it was a good place to grow up in the 60s. You know, my mom was like a hippie and we grew up in the canals. You know, she met my stepdad when I was about 4, and he owned a surfboard rental place underneath POP Pier. So I got to grow up, you know, playing in the pier on the top of it. All the security guards knew who I was as a kid, you know, when I was little, and so they let me in the amusement park for free. But the best part about the pier for us wasn't the amusement park on top, it was like the waves underneath it, you know. So that's where I grew up learning how to surf too. And Venice itself was just a whole different scene than it is today. I mean, with the hippies and stuff. My mom used to told me she dated Jim Morrison, and I remember he took us to a concert at POP Pier at a place called the Cheetah Theater. I still remember when they were playing, and he knocked the drummer knocked the cymbal thing down, and he picked it up. I can still remember that part of it. So
What
I don't.
about other things, like other types of people in Venice? Because later on.
Well, where I grew up in the canals, our next door neighbors were, what are they called? The Straight Satans or Satan Slaves, one or the other, one of those biker gangs, and they used to babysit me, and then all of my friends were like, what were their names? I don't know, they're all Mexican guys. I mean, it's been so long, I can't even remember their names.
So you used to kick it with a lot of the homeboys down there, right?
Well,
How did that happen?
that pretty much happened, you know, when I was a little kid, obviously, because all the neighbors were all mixed up in the Venice canals. And then later on, after the skateboarding thing, you know, I had moved to Santa Monica and just for about 2 years. And when I moved back to Venice, I was kind of bummed with the whole pro skateboarding thing. So I started hanging out with these guys called Venice hoodlums. And basically I just, you know, I didn't want to be Jay Adams skateboarder guy. I just wanted to be Jay Adams from Venice, you know, and hang out with them. And there was a big conflict back then between Santa Monica and Venice. It wasn't like it is today. The two neighborhoods were very different. Like, Venice was Venice, Dogtown was Santa Monica. I grew up in Venice, but I lived in Santa Monica from like 5th to 7th grade. No, well, 6th, 7th, and then on the end of, I guess it was 7th and a half or whatever, I moved to Hawaii. When I went back from Hawaii, I moved back to Venice. So, you know, it was just different. You know, nowadays, I guess, since that movie happened, they call Venice Dogtown. But back in the old days, it wasn't like that. Venice was Venice, Dogtown was Santa Monica.
What about when all these things that around you inspired you, like these cultural things that kind of ended up coming together? Like if you look at a lot of the old Dogtown graphics, they're like old Cholo letters and gangster stuff. And, you know, like how even some other dudes that came, like the dudes from Suicidal, all these dudes, how they adapted the whole, like, you know, Cholo look or just Latino looks. And how
Well, you know what?
kind of melted together.
My mom's last name was Romero, and I had a half brother who was half Mexican. So he grew up in Venice, and then he ended up going to prison for like years and years. I didn't actually, like, he left our house when I guess I was about 6 or something, got kicked out for doing heroin. Then he went to prison, did a bunch of years. I didn't meet him again until I was about 20. And, you know, he was just all, he had his prison lifestyle, but he was a good guy. He got sober and helped, like, I guess, one of the first guys to get into the NA thing, I guess, back in LA or something.
But that whole style was always around you growing up? Like in Venice?
Yeah, of course. Venice Venice was like known for having ghost town or whatever, which was like basically Latino and blacks in that whole neighborhood, the Oakwood Park area. And back in the 60s and 70s, it was kind of dangerous for white people to go down there. Not just white people, but people from anywhere that weren't from there.
Yeah.
So, you know, Venice was always a real mixed up group of guys.
Yeah.
You know, whites, blacks, Mexicans, everybody got along with each other pretty much. And, you know, I just grew up in that whole culture, you know.
Well, that's kind of like what we talked about the other day. It's like just not really closing off your mind and just being down with whatever you were feeling, whatever you like, not according to what people thought should be cool for you. And I think that's probably the way you were. You know?
Well, when I grew up as a kid, you know, I was a blonde-haired surfer kid, and we had, you know, the black guys at our school, but I always thought the essays were the coolest because they were kind of scary back then, you know what I mean, for a blonde-haired surfer kid. I remember I'd walk out of the thing at school, in junior high school, I'd walk out of the, you know, the lunch auditorium, and all the essay kids would be sitting outside, and they'd be all, "Hey, surfer." I'd be like, "Damn, these guys are crazy." So, you know, I kind of thought that they were cool, even though I was a surfer and skateboarder. I always thought that the essay guys were the coolest. I guess because they were just kind of, you know, they were crazy and kind of punk rock before the punk rock thing came out. You know, when you're a kid, I thought it was just cool to go around and beat up people and be kind of feared a little bit, you know? I just thought that was cool.
That's cool. They were punk rocks before the punk rock thing, right? But then you also, I know you had an influence on that like that whole scene in Venice and in your neighborhood. They looked up to you, like you changed a lot of the style around there, maybe just
because
with
maybe
the influence that you had.
Yeah, well, I was like, that was from the Venice hoodlum things, because I was like a white surfer skateboarder guy, but I hung out with those guys, and they were just whites and Mexicans in that little clique of guys. So, you know, I dressed in khakis and like, you know, Dickies and Pendletons and wore bandanas around, even though I was a white boy. But that just kind of went over to the punk rock thing when I started hanging out with Mike Muir. We all started doing that too, because of that influence that I had with the Venice hoodlums. That's what kind of got Mike and everybody else dressing like that, I would say.
But what about let's see. That's good.
We might have to go and park where we parked before on the other side over there.
So what did you used to get into other than just skateboarding? Like, what, I know you surf, but like what else? If there's anything like people don't really know, stuff, hobbies or other things that you like to do other than surfing and skateboarding.
Well, pretty much my whole life revolved around surfing. You know, if the waves were going to be good, I'd go to bed early and be good. If the waves weren't going to be good, you know, after we started doing things that I shouldn't have been doing, like, you know, drinking and smoking weed and partying. You know, my whole life revolved. See what all that drug use did to me? I can't even talk. Revolved around surfing.
Yeah.
And even skateboarding, we only did that when the waves weren't good. So, you know, even though, you know, I was doing drugs, it wasn't completely out of control, because you still had to be semi in control to go surfing every day, or when the waves were good. But that changed later on once the drug snowball just escalated into a mountain.
Yeah.
Surfing was, I mean, I was living in Hawaii, not even surfing. I was more worried about, you know, getting that thing in my arm every day.
What about we'll do a whole question thing on the dope. Like, we'll get back to that. What do you think about the skate? I know the skate industry has always been kind of like an issue with you, that you have your own perceptions of it, like the skate industry then and then the skate industry now. Like, what do you think about the industry?
Well, back in the 70s, the skateboard world was like, you know, the Brady Bunch, and we were kind of like the Bad News Bears. But, you know, skating was just kind of, you know, it was fun. Then it got professional, and it wasn't as fun. People got serious, egos got big, and I'm kind of glad that I wasn't part of some of the things, because now I look back on it and a lot of it just looks embarrassing to me. You know, like some of the movies that they made and stuff. But I mean, that was, you know, like I said, Brady Bunch days. Everybody looked like those guys.
Hardcore style, right?
Yeah, I guess I just had a punk rock attitude before, you know, the punk rock thing came, and I didn't want to be told what to do and how to do it. So, rebelled a little bit. Maybe an anti-authority problem.